you'll need to establish for negligence. This is what normally in the courts, in the Malaysian courts here, these are the things they use to establish negligence. First question they ask in the court is whether the defendant owe a duty of care towards the plaintiff. Once the plaintiff has shown proof on that, then they go to the second question, whether the defendant had breached that legal duty. If the plaintiff could show proof there was a breach by the defendant, then they go to the third question. Because of the breach, has the plaintiff suffered loss, damage, or injury? Okay, if yes, then of course the plaintiff would be successful. And also they use the remoteness test as the fourth test here. If it's too remote, then cannot claim. It must be reasonably foreseeable, only then can claim. Got it? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, any questions you wanted to raise before I go into to see what are the defenses available? What are the defenses available to the defendant? What are the defenses available to the defendant if for the breach of duty? Sometimes the sometimes the defendant also have some defenses, right? Of course, he also have some defenses to show that uh, it's not liable. Am I right? True, isn't that? So, what are the defenses can you think of? You need to know these defenses. You need to know the defenses. What are the defenses available to the defendant if the defendant had breached the duty of care? If it breached the duty of care, of course, there must be some defenses available for the defendant. Am I right? There must be some form of a defense available for the defendant, right? Okay, let's say example I give you. What do you mean by defenses here? What do you mean by defenses here? I give you some simple example here. Let's say, let's say the plaintiff uh, suffered some injury. The plaintiff had suffered some injury, but but the defendant was driving his car negligently. The defendant drove his car negligently or recklessly, and because of that, he went and hit the plaintiff car. When he hit the plaintiff car, the impact was so great, the plaintiff did not wear a safety belt. The plaintiff did not wear a safety belt, and he flew out of the windscreen and he was injured. Now, the question here is this. Even though the plaintiff had suffered injury, if the plaintiff would have wore a safety belt, he wouldn't have been thrown out of the windscreen. Am I right? True, isn't it? So here, the plaintiff also contributed towards the injury. Even though the defendant is liable, but when the quantum of damages is awarded to the plaintiff, the judge would minus whatever caused by the plaintiff. The judge would minus whatever uh, whatever damage or injury caused by the plaintiff, whatever he contributed. That's why that defense we call it as contributory negligence. Contributory negligence, contributory, CONTRIBUTORY, contributory negligence. Okay, contributory negligence means the plaintiff also contributed towards the injury. The plaintiff also contributed towards the injury. So that means if let's say um, the hospital bill total cost is 100,000, and the head injury has taken place because he didn't wear the safety belt. Okay, he has flown out and hit something, head injury to the head. So what the judge will do, let's say the head injury itself cost 20,000. He will minus off the 20,000 which the plaintiff contributed and will pay the plaintiff the balance 80,000. Like example, let's say you're riding a motorcycle without a safety helmet. Okay, and the car driver drove his car negligently and hit you. You have suffered head injury, leg injury, and also to other uh, parts of your body. Okay, the total hospital bill is 50,000, but your head injury itself costs you 20,000, and the rest of the part of the body's injury is 30,000. But the 20,000 head injury is because you didn't wear a safety helmet. If you would have worn a safety helmet, there wouldn't have been any injury to the head, only other parts of the body. So what the judge will do, end of the day, the defendant is at fault, but the total hospital bill is 50,000. 50,000 is supposed to be claimed by the plaintiff. What the judge will do, minus of the 20,000, which the plaintiff contributed, and pay the plaintiff only the 30,000. That is what in law we call as contributory negligence. Contributory negligence comes under Section 12 of the Civil Law Act 1956. So contributory negligence comes under Section 12 of the Civil Law Act 1956. So contributory negligence is a defense for the defendant, but it is only a partial defense, not a full defense, but it is only a partial defense, not a full defense. Are you following? It's only a partial defense and not a full defense. Okay, got it? Hello, any question on this before I go further?
No.
Any question? So, are you clear on what you mean by contributory negligence? Contributory
Yes.
negligence is a defense for the defendant. Contributory negligence is a defense for the defendant, but it is not 100% defense because end of the day, uh, the still he has to pay the plaintiff money, but minus off whatever the plaintiff has contributed, minus off, and you will get the balance of it. You'll get the balance of it. Okay. A case I can give you, From versus Butcher, F-R-O-O-M, from F-R-O-O-M versus Butcher, B-U-T-C-H-E-R, from versus Butcher. This is a case here where one of the parties was not wearing a safety belt and suffered injury. So the judge said, since this person did not wear a safety belt and the injury has taken place, the plaintiff also contributed towards the injury. So therefore, the judge will minus off whatever contributed by the plaintiff, and the balance would be given to the defendant. Sorry, and the balance would be given to the plaintiff. Got it? Hello?
Yes.
So, contributory negligence is a defense. Contributory negligence is a defense. It's a defense. Contributory negligence is a defense. Dapat? Okay, now, other than contributory negligence, yeah, you have also another defense called res ipsa loquitur. Got it? Hello?
Can you
Hello?
spell?
Can you
Okay, res ipsa loquitur. Res ipsa loquitur. R-E-S, one word. R-E-S is one word. IPSA, I-P-S-A, another word. I-P-S-A, another word. And then another word is loquitur, L-O-Q-U-I-T-O-R. Got it?
Yes.
Hello. Dapat tak? Res, R-E-S, res.
Yes.
IPSA, I-P-S-A, loquitur, L-O-Q-U-I-T-O-R. Res ipsa loquitur. Res ipsa loquitur is also a defense for who you know. Res ipsa loquitur, yeah. Now, what will happen in res ipsa loquitur means this is a Latin word now, not an English word, it's a Latin word, yeah. Bahasa Latin now. Okay. Res ipsa loquitur means, yeah, the plaintiff, the plaintiff not necessary. The plaintiff not necessary need to show proof. The plaintiff not necessary need to show proof. The plaintiff not necessary need to show proof that the defendant is the cause of the plaintiff's loss, damage, or injury. So that means, yeah, res ipsa loquitur is saying, yeah, the plaintiff not necessary must show, not necessary, the plaintiff must show that the defendant is the cause of the loss, damage, or injury suffered by the plaintiff. Not necessary. That means in res ipsa loquitur, yeah, the plaintiff not necessary must show that the defendant is the cause of the loss, damage, or injury suffered by the plaintiff. The facts or the circumstances of the case. The facts or the circumstances of the case is pointing the finger at the defendant. The facts or the situation of the case is pointing the finger at the defendant. So that means, yeah, res ipsa loquitur means, yeah, the plaintiff no need to show proof that the defendant is the one who caused the injury to the plaintiff. But the circumstances, but the circumstances or the situation is pointing the finger at the defendant, telling the defendant is at wrong. I'll give you an example. Here. Yeah. Example here. Okay. Let's say A. Let's say A is a patient. A is a patient and he's undergoing a surgery. He's undergoing a surgery. Surgery, you know what surgery, right? Undergoing an operation. Okay. While he's going under operation, is he conscious or unconscious? Hello?
Unconscious.
Conscious or unconscious?
Unconscious.
Of course, unconscious, right? If you're conscious, can they open your stomach? Huh? If you're conscious,
No.
can they?
No.
Huh?
No.
Okay, of course, they put you under temporary sleep by giving you anesthetic. They give you anesthetic attack, and then they put you under sleep. You wouldn't know what they're doing to your body, am I right? Okay, this is what happened in this situation. Yeah, this person is undergoing a surgery, and he was unconscious. The doctors performed the surgery, and after the surgery, the doctor left. The doctor left some swabs and some bandages inside the stomach and he stitched up. And then this patient, after a couple of days, he went back home and he felt a severe pain inside his stomach. Severe pain. And he came back to the hospital and they did an X-ray and they found in the X-ray some bandages inside his stomach. The question is, he could not show proof who has put it there because he was unconscious. Am I right? He was unconscious. But the circumstances or the situation is pointing the finger at the doctor because nobody has access to come into the operation theatre other than the surgeon who performed the surgery. He is in control where the nurse assists him while he's getting on the surgery. Am I right? Betul kan? This is what we mean by res ipsa loquitur. Res ipsa loquitur meaning, yeah, the facts itself speaks for it. The facts itself speaks for it. Meaning the plaintiff not necessary must show proof that the defendant is the cause of the injury, but the facts or the situation or the circumstances is pointing the finger at the defendant. Everybody? Hello?
Yes.
So that is a defense, yeah? So the defend for the, of course. So in that situation, the plaintiff not necessarily must show proof because he was unconscious. How to show proof he was unconscious? But the situation or the circumstances of the case is pointing the finger at the defendant. At the defendant. Correct? Another defense can be consent. 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 Sometimes, yeah, the defendant has given a consent. The plaintiff has given the consent for the defendant to carry out certain things. If any loss, damage, or injury suffered after giving consent, then it cannot be a defense for the defendant. Sorry, it can be a defense for the other party because you already given consent. Like you see, before you undergo any surgery, the doctor will give you a consent form that you agreed for the surgery, and the risk is there, and there is a risk in doing this surgery. You have already signed. And then if let's say there is some risk and maybe you have gone paralyzed or whatever, you cannot sue the defendant because the plaintiff already given a consent to the defendant to carry it out. Then of course cannot sue thereafter. You got it? So get it or not? Hello, did you all get it? Yes or no? Okay, clear.
Sorry, Esther. Can you repeat again for the consent one? Can you explain again the consent?
Okay. Consent. The consent means the plaintiff already given approval. The plaintiff already given approval to the defendant to carry out certain things or to carry out whatever job need to be done. That's already given approval. After giving approval, the defendant is carrying out that duty. And because in that process, the plaintiff had suffered some injury, loss, or damage, then cannot sue the defendant because the plaintiff already given the consent or the approval for the defendant to carry out. An example I give is the course uh, the, the case here, like surgery. Before the surgery, normally the doctors will give a consent form, ask the patient or the next of kin to sign to say that they're giving approval for the doctor to do the surgery. And also the doctor would have explained what are the chances of survival of the surgery, what are the repercussions. Okay, sometimes into a surgery, maybe partly they can go paralyzed, or maybe one hand can go numbness, this kind of things. Right? They'll explain everything. And this patient has given approval, or the next of kin of the patient has given approval. And the doctor performed the surgery, and this patient has suffered some damage or some has gone paralyzed or whatever, then cannot sue because he has already given consent for the doctor to perform the surgery. Can I mean or not? Then of course cannot sue. Of course cannot sue. Okay, got it? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir. Got it.
Okay. Okay, now one important thing you need to know here, one very, very important thing here. You need to know the case of Caparo Industries versus Dickman. Very, very important. Caparo. Did I
Can you
explain
spell,
about
sir?
Caparo. Caparo. Caparo Industries versus Dickman. Dickman. Caparo Industries versus Dickman. Okay, why this case is important here? Why this case very, very important here? Very, very important. Now you need to know this case here. I should have done this case before going into the defenses here. Okay, why? Yeah. Now, as what I did mention, uh, we follow the case of Donahue versus Stevenson to establish negligence, am I right? Or to establish duty of care. I told you all right. That was a very old English case in 1932, and then we followed one of the leading Malaysian cases, Lim Kabi versus Abdul Latif. Am I right? I told you all right. Okay, that is the trend they use. Okay, duty of care, breach of duty, damage, and remoteness. That is the format which we have been following. But in the recent times, yeah, listen carefully, yeah. But in the recent times, yeah, we are slowly moving out. We are slowly moving out from the Donahue versus Stevenson's guide to establish negligence. Slightly, we are moving on. Now we are trying to follow the judgment of Kaparau Industries versus Dickman. Okay, now, what are the things you need to know under this case here? What are the key things you need to know under this case here? In Donahue and Stevenson, duty of care, breach, damages, and remoteness, that are the things the plaintiff need to show proof. Am I right? Yes or no? Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
But in this case, Kaparau Industries, we have slowly moved out and we are using a test called Kaparau test. Kaparau test. TEST. Kaparau test says to establish duty of care, we follow the possibility. We follow the possibility. FORESEEABILITY. The possibility, comma, proximity. PROXIMITY. Possibility, proximity, and fair, just, fair, 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 comma, just, JUST, and reasonable. Fair, just, and reasonable to establish duty of care. To establish duty of care. So that means here we can use the Donahue and Stevenson, but we are trying to move out from there. We are using now. So that means here the possibility, proximity, fair and just and reasonable. This is the test which they use to establish.
Teacher, just is what? CUST or JUST?
Just JUST. Fair, FAIR, comma, just JUST, and reasonable. So that means here, this is much more easier, Is it reasonably okay? So how they're using, let me explain here, yeah. What they're telling, yeah. Is it reasonably foreseeable? Is it reasonably foreseeable? Is it reasonably anyone can reasonably foresee if the defendant has done this thing? This would be the impact on the plaintiff. So that means yeah, they're using the possibility test. They're using the possibility test. They're using the possibility test to establish. Let's say the plaintiff, let's say the defendant has done certain act. Because of that act, if any reasonable person can come to a conclusion, any reasonable person can come to a conclusion. Because of the act of the defendant, these would be the consequences, this would be the outcome. Reasonably can foreseeable. This would have been the impact. One using the possibility test. Secondly, there must be a close proximity, closeness between the plaintiff and the defendant. And thirdly, whatever loss, damage, or injury which the plaintiff is trying to claim from the defendant, it must be fair, reasonable, and just. It cannot be too high a claim. So we are using a much more easier system now. Okay, would any reasonable person come to conclusion because of the act of this defendant, this would be the consequences, or this would be the loss, damage, or injury suffered by the plaintiff? If yes, then the defendant is liable. So whatever amount, the quantum of damages the plaintiff trying to claim from the defendant, it must be fair, just, and reasonable. It must be fair, just, and reasonable. Okay, Let's say the actual loss is only suffered 20,000, but the plaintiff trying to claim 100,000. Is it fair, just and reasonable? No. Am I right? So they're using much more simpler system to establish negligence. Caparo Industries versus Dickman. This is also a House of Lords case, English case, and we are trying to deviate slowly and trying to follow that. But to be on the safe side, you explain what happened in Donoghue and Stevenson, and you say currently we are trying to slowly deviate, but bear this in mind. Nobody is telling the Donoghue, the laws laid down in Donoghue and Stevenson is wrong. Nobody is telling. But it's still right. But we are trying to use an alternative method to establish negligence. That is the Caparo Industries.
Teacher, can you repeat again? Before the plaintiff claim must be just and fair.
First thing, the possibility test. Second, the proximity test. That means there must be a closeness. There must be a closeness. And thirdly, whatever claim which the plaintiff trying to claim from the defendant must be fair, just, and reasonable.
What you mean the proximity there must be close? Is it like the
It must be fair and reasonable. The amount which you are going to claim, let's say you suffered a loss of only 20,000, but you are trying to claim 200,000. Is it fair, just, and reasonable? Are you following? Is it fair or not? The actual loss you suffered due to the dependent breach is only 20,000, but you are trying to claim 200,000. Is it fair, just, and reasonable?
not?
Of course, no, isn't it? So what they're trying to say is, to establish negligence, first they use the possibility test. Possibility test means could any reasonable person come to a conclusion if the defendant does some act, if because of that act these will be the consequences or this will be the suffering suffered by the plaintiff. Any reasonable person can come to conclusion. That means the duty of care has been established already. And secondly, they say there must be a close proximity between the plaintiff and the defendant. And thirdly, whatever claim you're trying to claim, it has to be fair, just, and reasonable. It cannot be.
Wait, teacher, you go a bit fast. So the first one is the probability test. So
The first one
is
is possibility test, possibility.
possibility.
The second one is proximity.
And the third one is must
And the
be
third one
fair.
is fair,
Just and fair.
just, and reasonable. It must be fair, just, and reasonable. It must be fair, it must be just, fair, and reasonable. It cannot be beyond imagination.
So for the possibility test is if any reasonable person do such
Now,
what?
if any reasonable person can come to a conclusion, if any reasonable person can come to a conclusion because of the act of the defendant, these will be the consequences suffered by the plaintiff. Any reasonable person will know because of an act of the defendant, the consequences will be this, then that is enough. Any reasonable person can come to a conclusion.
So which mean the defendant admin he done that lah and caused losses lah.
Yes, of course. You see, any reasonable person will come to a conclusion. Let's say the possibility test says if any reasonable person can say because of this act which is done by the defendant, the consequences or the repercussions will be this would have taken place with the plaintiff. This will be the consequences. That means a loss, damage, or injury would have been suffered by the plaintiff because of the act of the defendant. Any reasonable person could foresee, You see, the possibility test here, let's say I'm driving my car at 200 kilometers. I know what will be the consequences. I know what are the consequences, right? But still I'm
Yes.
going on to do it. Any reasonable person, any reasonable person can come to conclusion, can foresee, because of the act of the defendant, the impact will be total damage to the car. And of course, whoever sitting in the car would have been killed because of the impact at that speed. Am I right? Any reasonable person will come to that conclusion, right? That is what you mean by the possibility that they use the reasonable man. what would a reasonable man think if if the defendant has done an act, and what would be the loss, damage, or injury suffered by the plaintiff due to the act. So any reasonable person will say, this would have been the impact. These are the consequences of it. That's what you mean by the forcibility test. And then there must be a close proximity also. You see, when you're talking about close proximity, you know why? Uh, Proximity, uh, they in one British case here, they used one British case, McLaughlin case, McLaughlin versus O'Brien, if I'm not mistaken, the name of the case. You see, okay, let's say I give you an example. Uh, you are watching a live telecast. Okay, all of you are listening. Hello. Okay, you are watching a live telecast. You are watching a live telecast. And some of your family members are sitting in the stadium. Some of your family members are inside the stadium watching the football match. But you sitting at home and watching the live telecast. And you are seeing live here, you are seeing live, the stadium is collapsing. One part of the stadium is collapsing. And 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 the people suffered injury. And your relation or some of your loved ones are sitting there. And you got shock and you suffered from nervous shock. Now, can you sue and recover for whatever loss, damage, whatever you suffered due to the shock of seeing that thing, the stadium collapsing, and your relations are there, and people are screaming, and all the thing you seeing live, and you got shocked, and you underwent nervous shock. Can you claim or not? What do you think? Hello, boleh atau tak boleh? What do you think? Janice, are you on the line?
Yeah,
Can or not? Can? What do you think?
I don't think so.
Why? Okay, your answer is you don't think so. Why? Tell me.
Because you will not physically suffer from the
Because
injury.
you know why? There is no close proximity. There is no close proximity. You're seeing distance. And also, this is what you call as Watergate. That means, thousands of people would have been watching that. Then thousands of people will be claiming. Am I right? Is it fair? Of course, no, isn't there? This is what I'm trying to say. There must be a close proximity where the loss taken place and you are in that location also. Then yes, that's why they use the possibility, close proximity, and it must be just, fair, and reasonable to claim. That is the test they done in Caparo Industries versus Dickman case. It's also the House of Lords case. It went to the highest court in England, House of Lords. Even Donny and Stevenson also went to the House of Lords, the highest court in England. Same equivalent to our federal court in Malaysia. Okay, the next class here, I still I'm going to do negligence here. You know why? I'm going to do still negligence? Because the assignment question which you are going to do here, the 3,500 words here, negligence. Okay, I covered the general negligence now. Today. The next class I'm going to discuss on professional negligence. Okay, do a doctor or a duty of care? Do a doctor or a duty of care towards the patient? Yes or no? Do a doctor
Yes.
or do a lawyer or a duty of care towards his client? Let's say the lawyer is advising, and based on that advice, the client is acting and suffered a loss, and he sue and claim from the lawyer.
I
These are
think
the
not really.
let's say a chartered surveyor has given his report on a piece of land, and you have done it wrongly, and you have purchased that land, and something wrong has gone, or uh, you are taking advice, and the civil engineer has given you some advice, and based on that building, the structure of the building collapse. Is he answerable? These are what you call as professional negligence. Okay. Now, another situation I give you: a learner driver. You know what's a learner driver, right? You are a learner driver, and while you're driving and you injured a third party, but there is a trainer sitting inside the car, and you go and hit lamppost, and the trainer suffered injury. You jumped out and he suffered injury. So these are the situations I'm going to look into. You know why? Because all these angles you need to know in order to do your assignment. But okay, the best book here, the best book for negligence here, the best book for negligence here, the best book for negligence, just only on negligence. There's a book by R.K. Nathan, capital R, capital K, R.K. Nathan, Nathan. He was a practicing lawyer. And then he became a judge, and then he retired, and now he's back again as a practicing lawyer. He was a former high court judge. He has written an excellent book on the law of negligence. He's written an excellent book on law of negligence. That's the book we always refer to. All lawyers, they refer to that book. If you all can get hold of that book, okay, what I will do here to help you all out here, in that book here, I'm having that book here, what I'll do, the most of the cases are there. So what I will do for you all here, just between all of us here, I will try to snap some pictures, the cases, the facts here, important cases here, and I will send it to, because I don't want to send it to the group where another lecturer is there also there. I wanted to send it to maybe to a group where no other lecturers are in. Is there anything, Charlie or Janice?
Sorry.
Okay, we have our introduction to law, right? In that thing, I think Fawaz is there also, isn't there?
Yes.
Okay, do you all have any group where no lecturers are involved?
I mean, we can create a new group.
And then what I will do, I'll send it to that group, that cases which you could use it, because I do understand because of this COVID thing, you can't get access to most of the libraries and all the things. I do understand your situation.
I think you can send to the WhatsApp group, is it?
No, the WhatsApp group has got other lecturer.
Other lecturers.
Yeah.
So actually you create one, yeah? And then
Okay.
you just send it to me.
All right.
You can add me in there.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay. The next class I will go through on that professional negligence, yeah? And then what I will do, trespass, nuisance. Have I completed nuisance? Have I done nuisance?
I don't think so.
Okay, what about the rule in Ryland and Fletcher?
Yes, you did.
Okay. That is strict liability. Am I right? Strict liability,
Yes.
right? Something escape and danger. Okay, done that. Yeah. Okay. So now I'll do the negligence bit, and then trespass to land and trespass to person. That is intentional thought. I'll do that. And lastly, I will finish off on your environment.
Okay.
Okay. So so how many more classes left here now? Yeah. We have another one more class this month, right? We have, what the date today? We have another one or two classes this month. Shally,
Yeah.
how many classes we have this month? Another two or one?
This month,
Uh,
one more.
one more. And what
Yeah.
about it? What about in December?
December before which date?
I think till the second week. I think I think at least two classes. I think December. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay, don't worry. And after that, yeah, what I will do here, after that, what I'll do, I'll have one extra class for you just for your assignment, and also what are the changes for your final exam, because they are not going to use the final exam question which we have set. But there are alternative papers we have also set for you. I will guide you all on that. Okay. So
Okay.
in between, if you have any questions or anything in between, you can always call me up or WhatsApp.
So I got one question now.
Ah.
Just a small one. Just now you got say about the possibility, proximity, fair, just, and reasonable, right?
Ah,
That is that under concern?
no, 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 no. That's not under consent. Hello, hello. That's not under consent. That
That's under-
is to establish duty of care. Because now we are following whatever law laid down in Downing and Stevenson, right? First, do the defendant owe a duty of care towards the plaintiff? First question. The second element is whether that duty of care been breached. And thirdly, because of the breach, has the plaintiff suffered loss, damage, or injury? And fourthly, the remoteness test. That is how we are establishing negligence based on the case of Downing and Stevenson and also the case of Lim Kabi versus Abdul Latif. Am I right? And from that format, we are slowly moving out and we're using the Kaparo test now. One, the possibility test. The second, the proximity test. And thirdly, just, fair, and reasonable.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
So I will see you all the next Thursday. If anything, in
Okay.
between, I will send a message to your group. So Shelly, you create a group today itself and you give me, because in between I will try to put in a lot of information for you in that group.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank
thanks.
you.
Bye.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you, sir.
okay, another thing, yeah. Hello. Can you please do some of the tutorial questions here, please? You all can do all the tutorial questions, right?
Yes.
Why not you all just do? You know why? Sometimes we use that here to help out for you all if you all never do well in exam. You know. Are you following? Hello. Hello.
Sorry, sir. May I know the deadline for submit the tutorial questions?
But I thought the deadline are given there, isn't it? No.
Oh, so after if after the date, can we still submit?
You still submit. Still submit. Submit. Don't worry. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
For listening. Okay. See you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
I think
Bye.
I can see all the names here. 14 also today.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.